There is a man you have probably never heard of who is personally responsible for every luxury resort, every volcano, every dancing fountain, and every billion-dollar casino that stands on the Las Vegas Strip today. He had no casino experience. He was drowning in personal debt. He had a gambling addiction so severe, he once bet against his own casino. And yet, against every odds stacked against him, he built the single most important building in the history of Las Vegas. This is the story of Jay Sarno. And trust me, it is wilder than anything Vegas could invent. Hi, my name is Michael, and this is Old Vegas Legends. Who was Jay Sarno? To understand what Jay Sarno built, you first have to understand where he came from. Because this was not a man born into money or privilege or connections. Jay Sarno was born in 1922 in Cannonball, Missouri. And yes, that is a real place. I looked it up. He grew up poor, the son of a struggling family during the Great Depression, in a town so small that ambition itself must have felt like a foreign language. But Sarno was wired differently from the moment he could form a thought. He was a dreamer in the most dangerous sense of the word, not a passive dreamer who wished for things, an active dreamer who believed with a terrifying and almost irrational certainty that he could bend reality to match whatever vision was living inside his head. His friends and family described him as a man who was fundamentally incapable of thinking small. To Jay Sarno, everything was epic. Every meal was a feast. Every party was a spectacle. Every building was a palace waiting to be born. He got his start in the motel business, of all places. In the 1950s, he built a small chain of motor hotels called Cabana Motels across the South and Midwest. And even there, even in a business as unglamorous as roadside motels, Sarno could not help himself. He built swimming pools shaped like guitars. He installed fountains nobody asked for. He decorated lobbies with a level of theatrical excess that made his accountants physically nervous. His Cabana Motels were not just places to sleep, they were experiences. And that distinction, that fundamental difference in philosophy between a place to sleep and an experience to inhabit, that was the idea that would eventually change Las Vegas forever. He also had a gambling addiction that would make your jaw drop. We are talking about a man who would bet on anything, anywhere, or at any time. Football games, card games, the direction a raindrop would slide down a window. And it was this addiction, this compulsive need to chase the feeling that first pulled him west toward Las Vegas in the early 1960s. He came to gamble. He stayed to build. The idea that changed Las Vegas. Here is the thing you have to understand about Las Vegas in the early 1960s. The casinos that existed were, by today's standards, remarkably modest. They were essentially gambling halls that happened to have hotel rooms attached to the back. The Sands, the Desert Inn, the Flamingo, these were fine establishments. They had showrooms and restaurants and pools. But the underlying philosophy was simple. Get people in, get them to the tables, and get their money. Jay Sarno looked at that model and saw something completely different. He did not want to build a casino with a hotel. He wanted to build a fantasy world with a casino hidden inside it. The distinction sounds subtle. It was not. It was revolutionary. His concept for Caesar's Palace was rooted in a single, almost absurdly simple idea. What if every person who walked through those doors, regardless of who they were or where they came from, felt like a Roman emperor for the duration of their stay? Not a guest, not a customer, an emperor, a conqueror, a person of absolute power and indulgence. Every single design decision flowed from that central idea. The architecture was deliberately overwhelming. Giant columns, open sky, statues, fountains. The landscaping was lush and theatrical. The staff were dressed as Roman centurions and toga-clad cocktail servers. And here is the detail I love most, the one that reveals just how deeply Sarno had thought this through. There were no clocks anywhere in the building, not one. And the corridors were deliberately curved so you could never quite see an exit. Because emperors, Sarno reasoned, do not watch the clock. And emperors do not leave. This was not interior decorating. This was psychology. Sophisticated, manipulative, and genius. Sarno had essentially invented what we now call the destination resort, a place you do not visit, a place you disappear into. Every casino on Earth that has built a theme, created an atmosphere, or tried to transport you somewhere else owes its entire existence to the idea. Jay Sarno sketched out on a napkin sometime around 1962. The money problem, how he actually built it. Now here is where the story gets genuinely uncomfortable, because great ideas do not build themselves, and no bank in America was going to loan money to a motel operator with a gambling problem who wanted to build an ancient Roman fantasy land in the Nevada desert. Sarno went to bank after bank. He was turned down every single time. The vision was too expensive, too theatrical, too insane. The projected budget was somewhere around $19 million, which in the early 1960s was an almost incomprehensible sum for a single hotel property. Nobody would touch it. So Sarno did what ambitious men in Las Vegas did in the 1960s when legitimate financing was unavailable. He went to the Teamsters. Specifically, he went to the Central States Pension Fund of the Teamsters Union, which at the time was being administered by a man named Alan Dorfman, who had extremely close ties to organized crime, and most notably to the Chicago outfit. The Teamsters Pension Fund had already been used to finance several Las Vegas properties throughout the 50s and 60s. It was the worst kept secret in the state of Nevada, and Sarno, who had already received a Teamsters loan for his Cabana motels, knew exactly where to knock. He secured an $18 million loan, the largest the Teamsters had ever issued for a Las Vegas property at that point. And with that money, construction began on Caesar's Palace in 1964. Now I want to be very clear about something here. Jay Sarno was not a mob boss. He was not a gangster. He was a dreamer who needed money and took it from the people who were willing to give it to him. But that decision came with strings attached that would follow him for the rest of his life. The mob did not invest in Las Vegas casinos out of generosity. They invested because they expected a return, and not always the kind that shows up on a balance sheet. The construction itself was an absolute circus, and I mean that almost literally. Sarno changed his mind constantly. He would walk the site and demand walls be moved, pools be expanded, fountains be added. The budget overran. The timeline collapsed. Contractors threatened to walk off the job. His business partner, Nate Jacobson, reportedly aged a decade during the 2 years it took to build the place. And through all of it, Sarno remained completely, almost supernaturally calm. It's because in his mind, he could already see it finished. He was already living inside the dream. Opening night, the greatest party. Nobody remembers. Caesar's Palace opened on August 5th, 1966. And if you want to understand Jay Sarno in a single moment, understand this. He threw an opening party so extravagant, so gloriously over the top, that it nearly bankrupted the casino before a single regular guest ever checked in. Sarno flew in celebrities from across the country. He ordered food and drink on a scale that defied reason. And the centerpiece of the whole spectacle, the detail that has become legendary in Las Vegas history, was the shrimp. Sarno reportedly ordered so much shrimp for the opening party that the quantity has been debated and exaggerated for decades. Some accounts say over 100,000 pieces. Whether the exact number is accurate almost does not matter. The point is that Jay Sarno ordered shrimp the way other men ordered napkins, in quantities that made the catering staff genuinely concerned for his sanity. The party was a sensation. The Strip had never seen anything like it. Hollywood came, the press came, and when the smoke cleared and the last toga-clad server carried away the last empty platter, the damage to the operating budget was severe enough that Sarno had to go back to his Teamsters contacts almost immediately for additional financing. He did not care. The dream was open. Caesar's Palace was real, and within weeks it was clear that Sarno had been right about everything. The public responded to his fantasy world with an enthusiasm that silenced every skeptic who had laughed at his Roman columns. Room rates held strong. The casino floor was packed. The reviews were unlike anything Vegas had generated before. People did not just say they had a good time. They said they felt different inside those walls. They said they felt special, which, of course, was precisely the point. Why it nearly failed. But here's what the brochure will never tell you. Beneath the marble and the fountains and the togas, Caesar's Palace was quietly coming apart at the seams. And the man responsible for building it was also the man most responsible for destroying it. Jay Sarno's personal spending was catastrophic. He lived at Caesar's Palace like an actual Roman emperor, which would have been charming if Roman emperors had been personally responsible for meeting a monthly debt payment to the Teamsters Pension Fund. His personal expenses ran into hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. He threw parties. He ate lavishly. He tipped extravagantly. He was, by every account, utterly incapable of distinguishing between his personal fortune and the casino's operating capital. And then there was the gambling. Jay Sarno, the man who built a casino specifically designed to psychologically trap guests inside it, gambled compulsively against his own house. And Caesar's Palace, with its Teamsters financing and its organized crime connections, was very much on their radar. The pressure was building from every direction simultaneously. Meanwhile, the mob's patience, never a particularly renewable resource, was wearing thin. The casino was profitable, yes, but the skim, the illegal cash being skimmed off the top of casino revenue before it was reported to regulators, was a constant source of tension and exposure. The people who had funded Jay Sarno's dream were not silent partners content to wait for quarterly dividends. They wanted their money, they wanted their cut, and they wanted it on their timeline. Sarno was being squeezed from above by federal investigators, from below by debt obligations he could barely service, and from within by his own spectacular inability to stop spending money he did not have. The empire he had built with sheer force of vision was beginning to crack under the weight of everything he had refused to think about while he was busy dreaming. The forced exit. By 1969, 3 years after the greatest opening party Las Vegas had ever seen, Jay Sarno was pushed out of Caesar's Palace. The sale was engineered by the very financial forces that had made the whole thing possible. Caesar's Palace was sold to Lums Inc., a Florida-based restaurant chain, for around $60 million, which sounds like a triumph until you understand what Sarno actually walked away with personally after debts were settled and obligations were met. The man who built the most important casino in Las Vegas history did not retire wealthy. He walked away from his creation with far less than the building was already worth. Think about that for a moment. Jay Sarno conceived the entire vision from nothing. He fought for 2 years to get it financed. He supervised every detail of its construction. He threw the party that introduced it to the world. And 3 years later, other people owned it. He was not just losing a business, he was losing the physical manifestation of his imagination. Caesar's Palace without Jay Sarno was like the Sistine Chapel without Michelangelo. The building remained. The soul that conceived it was gone. He reportedly walked the floor one last time before the handover. I like to think he stopped at one of those curved corridors, the ones he designed specifically so you could never see the exit, and appreciated the irony. Because in the end, someone had found the exit for him. What came next? Circus Circus. To his credit, and this is one of the things I genuinely love about Jay Sarno, he did not quit. He could have taken what money he had, moved somewhere quiet, and spent the rest of his life telling people at dinner parties that he built Caesar's Palace. Most people would have done exactly that. Instead, he went and did it again. In 1968, while he was still technically running Caesar's Palace, Sarno had already begun developing his next vision, Circus Circus, a casino built entirely around the concept of a permanent circus, with live acrobats performing above the casino floor, carnival games, and an atmosphere of pure anarchic spectacle. It was, even by Sarno's standards, completely insane. The opening in 1968 was a disaster. There were no hotel rooms, which in retrospect seems like a significant oversight for a hospitality business. The operating losses were severe. The chaos of live circus acts performed above gambling tables was, it turns out, somewhat difficult to manage. Sarno had once again bet everything on a vision that the rest of the world was not quite ready for, but the bones of the idea were right. Circus Circus eventually found its footing under different ownership. And once again, Sarno had pioneered a concept, the themed entertainment casino, that others would profit from long after he was gone. The legacy. What Vegas owes this man. Here is the argument I want you to take away from this video. And I want you to think about it the next time you walk past the Bellagio fountains, or watch the volcano at the Mirage erupt, or check into any hotel on Earth that has ever tried to make you feel like you are somewhere other than a building full of slot machines. None of that exists without Jay Sarno. Steve Wynn, the man widely credited with reinventing Las Vegas in the 1980s and 90s, has openly acknowledged that the Mirage was built on the philosophical foundation that Sarno laid with Caesar's Palace. The idea that a casino could be a destination, that the experience itself was the product. that you could make a person feel transformed simply by controlling everything they saw, heard, smelled, and felt from the moment they walked through the door. That idea was Jay Sarno's. He did not borrow it from anyone. He invented it. And yet, Jay Sarno died in 1984 at the age of 62, largely broke, largely forgotten, in a Las Vegas hotel room, not Caesar's Palace, a regular hotel room. The city he had fundamentally transformed did not stop to notice. There was no tribute on the strip, no ceremony. The man who built the palace died without one. The corporations that now operate Caesar's Palace, the ones charging you $50 a night in resort fees for Wi-Fi and a gym you will never use, they are the inheritors of Jay Sarno's dream. They have taken his vision and extracted every last drop of warmth and personality from it, replacing it with spreadsheets and kiosks and 6-to-5 blackjack. They kept the columns and threw away the soul. Jay Sarno's real legacy is not the building that still carries his name in a vague, modified way. His real legacy is the proof that one genuinely original idea, pursued with reckless, irrational, magnificent commitment, can change an entire city, can change an entire industry, can create something out of nothing that outlasts the person who dreamed it by decades. That is what Las Vegas owes this man. Everything and a statue. Seriously, somebody build that man a statue. That is the story of Jay Sarno, the dreamer who built the palace, lost the palace, built a circus, lost the circus, and died before the world got around to thanking him. If this story made you feel something, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to a channel like this. Every week on Old Vegas Legends, we go back and find the real people, the real stories, and the real history that the corporations are quietly bulldozing to build another luxury tower nobody asked for. Next week, we are going to a story I have been saving for a long time, one that is going to make you genuinely furious. Until then, watch your wallet, and remember what Jay Sarno knew. In this town, the dream is always worth building. Just maybe hire a better accountant.